Think about the coldest night you've ever lived through. The kind of night when the wind cuts through you like a knife, when your breath freezes in the air, and even your bones feel like they're rattling. Now picture this. No furnace humming in the basement, no heated blanket waiting on the couch, not even a flicker of electricity. Just you, your body, and whatever nature is willing to give you. That was reality for the native peoples of the far north. Arctic winds howled like wolves outside their shelters, and yet they endured. No Gore-Tex jackets, no double-paned windows, no thermostat to crank up. Just grit, ingenuity, and a will to see another sunrise. So here's the burning question. How did they do it? How did they not only survive, but raise families, build communities, and keep their culture alive in a world where winter could kill you overnight? Tonight, around our little fire, let me share with you 7 forgotten heating hacks, tricks that meant the difference between life and death, and wisdom that still echoes in our modern world. Picture this, an Inuit hunter stepping out into the white silence of an Arctic morning. The snow is so deep it swallows his boots, the wind so sharp it feels like it could peel the skin off your face. And yet he doesn't shiver. Why? Because every inch of his body is wrapped layer upon layer in nature's finest armor. Seal skin on the outside, tough and slick, turning back the icy gusts. Beneath that reindeer fur, thick with hollow hairs, trapping warm air like 1,000 tiny fireplaces. Underneath, softer hides close to the skin, wicking away sweat before it can freeze. Each step he takes, the snow crunches, but his body stays warm, almost like he carries his own furnace. Here's the secret: those layers didn't just keep the cold out, they kept the heat in. The air between each layer worked like insulation foam, the same principle modern hikers call the onion method. You peel it on, you peel it off, but the key is never letting the warmth escape. The outer shell stopped the wind, the inner furs cradled heat, and together they made a barrier no Arctic gale could break through. Now folks today spend hundreds of dollars on high-tech jackets, Gore-Tex shells, and thermal liners. But the truth is, the native hunters had cracked this code centuries ago, using nothing more than what the land gave them. They didn't call it performance gear. To them, it was just common sense. You know the old saying, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. Well, the Inuit lived that to the letter. They turned animals into living blankets, stitched by hand, layered with care, and passed down from one generation to the next. And it wasn't fashion, it was survival. Now picture a storm rolling across the tundra, snow whipping sideways, the kind of blizzard that makes you feel like the whole world's gone white. Out there in the middle of nowhere stands an igloo, just a dome of snow blocks glowing faintly from a small oil lamp flickering inside. From the outside, it looks like nothing. Cold, fragile, temporary. But step through that narrow doorway, and suddenly you're in another world. The air is calm, the ground is dry, and most of all, it's warm enough to breathe without pain. The secret snow, the very thing that tries to kill you, becomes your shield. When it's packed tightly, snow turns into insulation, trapping heat instead of stealing it. The igloo's curved walls hold in warm air like a giant thermos, while the low entrance keeps cold drafts down near the floor. Families could huddle inside the heat from their bodies, and a single qulliq lamp raising the temperature by dozens of degrees. It wasn't cozy like a cabin in the woods, but compared to the screaming winds outside, it felt like paradise. And it wasn't just igloos. In forested regions, native people dug homes half into the earth, covering roofs with sod and snow. The ground itself acted like a thermal blanket, steady and dependable, keeping out the worst of the freeze. You might say they worked with Mother Nature instead of fighting her. Today, architects spend fortunes on insulation foam, double walls, and passive heating designs. But the truth is, these snow domes and earth lodges were doing the same job centuries ago. They weren't just shelters. They were survival machines built from nothing but what lay beneath your feet. Proof that sometimes the best house is one that looks like it grew straight out of the land. Now let's move from snow walls to fire itself. Picture an Arctic night, dark, silent, so cold, the stars almost seem frozen in place. A family huddles inside their shelter, the fire burning low. They know the flames won't last until dawn. Wood is precious driftwood, hauled from miles away, too scarce to waste. So what do? They turn to the oldest heater known to humankind, stone. They'd place heavy rocks right into the fire, letting the flames lick them until they glowed with heat. Then carefully they'd lift those stones out with wooden tongs, wrap them in thick layers of sealskin or caribou hide, and tuck them beneath their bedding. Slowly those stones would radiate warmth all through the night. No blaze, no sparks, just steady, gentle heat, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Think of it as nature's hot water bottle. We fill ours from a kettle. They carved theirs from the land. And believe me, those stones could hold heat for hours, turning icy, sleeping platforms into warm, safe havens. Kids could sleep soundly, elders could rest without fear of frostbite, and hunters could rise at dawn ready to face another day. You might say, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but in this case, putting all your warmth into a few stones was the smartest basket of all. Even today, survivalists still use this trick when camping in the wild. Heat a rock, bury it under your sleeping bag, and you'll last through a night that might otherwise send you packing. It wasn't just clever, it was life-saving. The native people knew how to turn fire into a battery, storing the sun's energy in simple stones. A reminder that sometimes the oldest ideas are still the best ones. Now let's step inside that igloo again. The storm is raging outside, the wind howling like a freight train, but in the center of the snow dome, there's a glow. Not a roaring fire, not a stack of burning logs, just a small, steady flame dancing on a shallow stone lamp. That was the qulliq, the traditional oil lamp of the Inuit and other northern peoples. At first glance, it looks too small to matter, but that flicker was everything. The qulliq burned seal fat or whale blubber fuel so rich they didn't just light the room, they warmed it. That gentle flame gave off heat for hours, enough to take the edge off the bitter cold, and just enough to cook a meal or melt snow for drinking water. Imagine a family gathered around it, faces glowing, shadows swaying on the curved walls of ice. For them, it wasn't just a lamp. It was hearth, kitchen, and lifeline rolled into one. You've probably heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, the qulliq was proof. That humble little flame held back the Arctic night. Without it, survival wasn't just tough, it was impossible. And here's the kicker. Modern campers think they've got something new with those pocket-sized gas stoves. Truth is, the qulliq was doing the same job centuries ago. Portable, efficient, running on local fuel, it was the original camp stove, only it doubled as a heater and a lantern too. So when you think about survival, remember this. Sometimes the smallest light makes the biggest difference. For the Inuit, that trembling flame was hope itself, a reminder that no matter how long, the night the dawn would come. Here's a twist you might not expect. The very thing that freezes your toes and blinds your eyes. Snow was also one of the greatest protectors. Picture a native shelter, maybe a sod house dug halfway into the ground. Winter comes winds, screaming snow, piling higher and higher. Most of us today would grab a shovel and dig ourselves out. But for them, they let it build. In fact, they welcomed it. Once packed down, snow turns into nature's insulation. Those flakes that feel so cold to the touch. When compressed, they trap tiny pockets of air, holding heat the way modern insulation foam does. Families would intentionally cover their lodges with a thick layer of snow, sealing out the wind and holding warmth inside. To step inside one of those homes was to walk into a different climate outside the wind chill could kill. Inside, it felt like spring compared to the blizzard. It's a classic case of if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Instead of fighting snow, they used it. The heavier it fell, the better their insulation. Where others saw a threat, they saw a tool. And that tool often meant the difference between frostbite and survival. Modern architects spend millions designing energy-efficient green buildings with passive heating systems, double walls, and high-tech foam. Yet centuries ago, native people were already practicing a version of passive insulation with nothing but shovel sod and snow drifts. Simple, elegant, effective. So the next time you curse a snowstorm, think about this. To our ancestors, every snowflake was a gift. A blanket from the sky, proof that sometimes the harshest enemy can become your strongest ally if you know how to work with it. After a long day on the tundra, hunters would return with their catch snow clinging to their boots, breath hanging heavy in the air. Inside the shelter, the night wasn't just about eating, it was about staying alive together. They sang songs, told old stories, even danced in small circles to keep the blood moving. Every step, every laugh, every drumbeat was a way of pushing back against the cold. But when the fire burned low and the lamps dimmed, they relied on something even more powerful than flame each other. Families would pile under heavy furs, pressing close children in the middle, elders tucked safely along the edges. Body against body, they created what scientists today call shared thermal mass. To them, it was just common sense. A single person might shiver, but a group could build a pocket of warmth strong enough to fight the coldest night. There's an old saying, many hands make light work. Well, many bodies make warm nights too. The more people, the more heat. Even dogs curled up alongside their owners, not as pets, but as part of the survival plan. In that moment, they weren't just individuals, they were one living heater, fueled by the steady rhythm of human breath. Modern soldiers, mountain climbers, and trekkers still use this trick. They call it huddle for warmth, and it can mean the difference between frostbite and making it to sunrise. It may feel awkward at first, but when the mercury drops, pride doesn't matter. Warmth does. So while the Arctic winds howled outside, these families knew something we often forget. Survival is a team sport, and in the darkest nights, the strongest fire was the one they built together. Now let's step into the shelter on a night when the blizzard is howling so loud it rattles your bones. Inside, the fire burns low, the lamp flickers, but something else is happening. A figure sits cross-legged, herbs smoldering in a small bowl, filling the air with a sharp, earthy scent. A chant rises, steady and rhythmic, weaving through the dark, like a rope pulling everyone back from fear. This wasn't just ritual, it was survival. The elders and healers knew that some herbs helped blood flow, warming the body from the inside. Others calmed the mind, slowing the panic that made cold feel even colder. They believed that strength wasn't only in muscle, it was in spirit. And they weren't wrong. Modern science tells us stress tightens blood vessels, but calmness lets warmth spread. In other words, a strong heart and steady mind could mean the difference between freezing and pulling through. There's an old saying, mind over matter. Well, in the Arctic, mind over cold was just as real. Singing together, praying, or listening to stories wasn't wasted time. It kept the body moving, the spirit grounded, and the group united. A warm soul made for a warmer body. Today, we call it herbal medicine meditation, or even biohacking. Back then, it was simply tradition. They didn't have fancy supplements or heated yoga studios, but they had willow bark for pain, spruce tips for strength, and songs that carried courage from one generation to the next. So while the storm raged outside, inside those snow huts, people found more than heat. They found hope. And sometimes that's the hottest flame of all. 7 hacks, 7 lifelines. From fur layers to hot stones, from snow-packed roofs to the trembling flame of a qulliq native peoples, turn the Arctic from a death sentence into a classroom. They didn't just survive the cold, they mastered it. What's striking is how simple it all was. No gadgets, no wires, no factories, just resourcefulness, tradition, and the courage to face another sunrise. These lessons whisper to us even now, survival isn't about having everything. It's about knowing how to use what you've got. My grandfather used to say, the old ways aren't gone, they're just waiting for us to need them again. And looking at these hacks, I believe that. But warmth was only one battle. Next came food navigation and finding ways to thrive where others froze. And those stories, well, they're waiting for the next fire.